The alarm screamed at 4:47 in the morning, dragging Violet Monroe from sleep that had barely come. She slapped at the cheap plastic clock until silence returned to her studio apartment, then lay there staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a hand reaching for something it would never touch. Her body ached before she even moved. 3 double shifts this week, 4 last week. The math of survival never balanced no matter how many hours she sold. She forced herself upright, feet hitting linoleum that curled at the edges. The apartment was small enough that she could see everything from the bed. Kitchenette with 2 working burners, bathroom door that didn't close completely, single window overlooking an alley where stray cats fought over garbage. Rent was $800 a month. She was 14 days from eviction. The notification on her phone glowed with the same message it showed every morning. Payment past due. Medical debt from 2 years ago. $23,000 for a funeral she couldn't afford, for a sister she couldn't save. Violet opened her wallet to count pills she couldn't afford either. Anxiety medication. 3 left. The refill cost $40 she didn't have. She swallowed one dry and tucked the wallet back in her bag, where a memorial card slipped out and fell to the floor. Emma Monroe, age 8, gone but never forgotten. She picked it up with hands that had stopped shaking months ago. Grief had worn grooves into her so deep that tears didn't come anymore. Just the weight, the constant, crushing weight of a world that took everything and gave nothing back. Violet dressed in jeans worn soft at the knees and a t-shirt that used to be black but had faded to gray. She pulled her auburn hair into a ponytail, splashed water on her face, and didn't bother with the mirror. She knew what she'd see. 26 years old and exhausted down to her bones. The bus to Metro Diner was late like always. She stood at the stop as the sun threatened to rise over a neighborhood that looked worse in daylight. Graffiti covered every flat surface. Broken streetlights lined the block. Sirens wailed in the distance, so constant they'd become background noise nobody noticed anymore. A police car rolled past, slowing just enough for the officer to look at her like she was the problem. She looked away first. Everyone did in this part of town. The diner appeared through the bus window at 5:43. The neon sign flickered, half the letters dead. Tro Diner, it read now. The M and E had given up months ago, and the owner was too cheap to fix them. Inside smelled like burnt coffee and fryer grease that had needed changing since last Tuesday. Violet tied on an apron that had someone else's name tag still pinned to it and started her shift with a smile she didn't feel for customers who wouldn't notice anyway. 6 hours of refilling cups, taking orders, pretending she couldn't hear the comments some men made when she walked past. A trucker grabbed her wrist during the breakfast rush. She pulled free without a word because complaining meant getting fired, and getting fired meant the street. Her tip jar held $11.37 when her shift ended at 2. The collection notice was taped to her apartment door when she got home. Final warning in red letters. She crumpled it with the others in the kitchen drawer that didn't close anymore. 4 hours of sleep that felt like minutes. Then awake again for the night shift. The cleaning job started at 11. St. Catherine's Private Hospital paid cash under the table, $9 an hour to scrub floors and hallways where people who could afford health care walked without noticing the woman making their world spotless. Violet had learned the routine. 3rd floor first, then down to 2nd, finish in the basement level where they kept supplies. Stay invisible. Don't make eye contact with doctors who treated her like furniture. She was emptying a trash bin on the restricted wing when she realized she'd gone too far. This floor required badge access. She'd followed another cleaner through the security door without thinking, and now she was alone in a hallway that felt different from the rest. Quieter, more expensive, private rooms with closed doors and guards in suits instead of hospital security. She should turn around, go back to where she belonged. But then she heard it. A sound that stopped her breath in her chest. A child crying. Not the wail of pain or tantrum, the silent kind, the suffocating kind, the kind Emma used to do in the hospital when she thought no one was listening. Violet's feet moved before her brain caught up. She followed the sound to a door left slightly open, light spilling into the dim hallway. The room inside was nothing like the rest of the hospital. It looked like a hotel suite. Private bathroom, flat-screen television, leather furniture, and medical equipment that hummed with technology she'd never seen during Emma's treatment. A boy sat on the floor despite the expensive hospital bed. 6 years old, maybe younger. Impossibly thin with pale skin that looked translucent under the fluorescent lights. Dark hair messy, like no one had bothered to comb it. Ice blue eyes red from crying. He was drawing on paper spread across the tile. Pictures of people with faces scribbled out so violently the crayon had torn through. He looked up when her shadow crossed the threshold. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Recognition. The kind only people who've lived in hospitals understand. Violet knew she should leave. This was wrong. This was someone's child in a restricted wing with guards who'd throw her out or worse. But the boy didn't scream for help, didn't tell her to go. He just stared at her with eyes that had seen too much. Every alarm in her head screamed warnings. Her hands gripped the mop handle until her knuckles went white. The boy whispered something so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Please don't leave, too. Violet felt the words like a fist to the chest. She looked at his drawings again. The medical equipment beeping steady beside him. The IV line taped to his small arm. The stuffed wolf toy sitting on the chair like it was watching over him. She thought of Emma in a room nothing like this. Emma who died because they couldn't afford better. Emma who used to cry the same silent way when the nurses left her alone. The mop clattered when Violet let it fall. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a decision she couldn't take back. What she didn't know was that his father was the most dangerous man in the city, and that entering this room had just marked her for persecution. Death. Violet crossed the threshold into the hospital room like she was crossing into another world. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing her inside with the crying boy and a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. The child watched her with those ice blue eyes, waiting for her to speak first or leave like everyone else probably did. Up close, she could see the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hospital gown hung off shoulders that seemed too small to carry whatever weight he was bearing. "Are you okay?" The question left her mouth before she could stop it. Stupid question. Obviously he wasn't okay. But something shifted in his expression, like the question itself mattered more than the answer. He didn't respond, just looked down at his drawings again, small hands clutching a blue crayon so tight his knuckles matched the white of his skin. Violet moved slowly, the way she used to with Emma during the bad days. She lowered herself to the floor a few feet away from him, careful not to invade his space. Her cleaning uniform crinkled as she sat cross-legged on tile that was probably cleaner than her entire apartment. The drawings were scattered around him, like evidence of something dark. Families with faces violently scribbled out, houses with black clouds overhead. One picture showed 3 figures, 2 tall and 1 small, but the smallest figure stood alone on the opposite side of the paper. "You're a good artist," she said quietly. Her voice sounded too loud in the sterile room, despite the beeping machines. The boy's hand hesitated on the paper. He glanced at her sideways, suspicious and hopeful in equal measure. "My sister used to draw," Violet continued. She didn't know why she was saying it. She never talked about Emma, not to anyone. But something about this child pulled the words out like he had a right to them. She liked purple. Everything she drew had purple in it somewhere. The boy's grip on the crayon loosened slightly. What happened to her? Violet felt the question lodge in her chest like it always did. She got sick, like you, maybe. The hospitals couldn't fix her. She shouldn't have said it. You didn't tell dying kids about other kids who died. But he didn't look scared. He looked understanding. "Everyone's afraid to stay," he whispered. "The nurses come, but they leave fast. The doctors don't look at me. They look at the machines." His voice was small and precise, like he'd practiced these observations alone in the dark. Violet's heart cracked clean down the middle. "I'm not afraid." The lie came easy, because it was also the truth. She was terrified of a dozen things, poverty and eviction and the weight of her sister's ghost, but she wasn't afraid of this boy. "You're not a nurse," he said. It wasn't a question. "No, I clean the floors. I'm not supposed to be in here." "Why did you come in?" Violet looked at him directly. "Because you sounded like someone who needed someone to stay." Something changed in the boy's face. The transformation was instant and heartbreaking. His entire expression opened like she'd just given him something he'd stopped hoping for. He set down the crayon and turned his body toward her fully. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" The request was so simple it gutted her. "Yeah, I can do that." His small hand reached out and grabbed hers. His palm was cold and dry, fingers thin as bird bones. She squeezed gently, careful not to dislodge the IV line taped to his other arm. They sat like that in silence for a long moment. Violet noticed details she'd missed before. The stuffed wolf toy on the chair had one ear torn. The television was off, but the remote sat on the bed like someone had been watching something before giving up. There was a photo on the bedside table, turned face down. "What's your name?" she asked. "Leo." The boy, Leo, studied her face like he was memorizing it. "What's yours?" "Violet." "Like the color?" "Like the flower." "I don't know that flower." "It's small, purple, grows in places it's not supposed to." Violet smiled, despite everything. "Kind of stubborn." "Like you," Leo said, with the blunt honesty only children possessed. "Yeah, like me." Leo's eyes started to droop. The exhaustion in his small body was visible, like staying awake required more energy than he had to give. "Will you be here when I wake up?" Violet heard footsteps in the hallway outside, security maybe, or nurses doing rounds. She should leave now before someone found her. But Leo's hand tightened in hers, and she saw her sister's face superimposed over his. "I have to go soon," she said honestly, "but I'll come back tomorrow night, same time, I promise." Leo's eyes focused with sudden intensity. "People don't keep promises to me. I will." "How do I know?" "Because I said it, and I don't say things I don't mean." He searched her face for lies and must not have found any, because he nodded slowly. "Okay, tomorrow night." Tomorrow night. She helped him into the hospital bed, adjusting the thin blanket over him and making sure his IV line wasn't tangled. He clutched the stuffed wolf to his chest with one arm. "Can you tell me a story? Just a short one?" Violet wasn't good with stories, but she tried. Once there was a wolf who everyone thought was dangerous, but really he was just protecting the things he loved. He was strong and fierce, but only because he had to be. And one day he found someone who wasn't afraid of him, and that changed everything. Leo's breathing evened out before she finished. Sleep took him fast and deep, the kind of sleep sick children fall into when their bodies can't fight anymore. Violet sat there longer than she should have, watching his chest rise and fall. Then she carefully extracted her hand from his, stood on legs that had fallen asleep, and moved toward the door. She looked back once. The boy looked impossibly small in the expensive bed, surrounded by machines keeping him alive, and completely alone despite the money that had paid for all of it. "Tomorrow night," she whispered to the sleeping child. The hallway was empty when she slipped out. Her mop and bucket sat where she'd abandoned them. She finished her shift in a daze, mind replaying the past 30 minutes over and over. The next 3 days crawled by. Violet went through her routines on autopilot. Diner shift, bills she couldn't pay, bus rides where she stared out windows seeing nothing. The whole time thinking about ice blue eyes and a promise she'd made. When her night cleaning shift came around again, she moved through the hospital with purpose. 3rd floor, then 2nd, then straight to the restricted wing. She waited for another staff member to badge through the security door and slipped in behind them. Her heart murmured as she approached Leo's room. The door was closed this time. No light spilled into the hallway. She knocked softly, then pushed the door open. The room was empty. Not just empty of Leo, empty completely. The bed was stripped down to the plastic mattress. The medical equipment was gone. The stuffed wolf, the drawings, the photo on the bedside table, Everything removed like no one had ever been there. Violet stood frozen in the doorway, panic rising in her throat. Where was he? What happened? A nurse passed in the hallway behind her. Violet grabbed her arm without thinking. The boy who was in this room, where did he go? The nurse's expression shifted from annoyed to cautious. She looked Violet up and down, taking in the cleaning uniform. You shouldn't be asking questions about patients. Please, I just need to know if he's okay. The nurse pulled her arm free. The Kozlov boy was discharged by his father 3 days ago. Private transport. That's all I know. Now you need to get back to work before I call security. She walked away fast, leaving Violet standing there with the name echoing in her head. Kozlov. She'd heard that name before. On the news, in whispered conversations at the diner when certain men came in and everyone got quiet. Kozlov, the organization that controlled the North Side, the wolf of the city's underworld. Violet's hands started shaking. She'd made a promise to the son of a man who made people disappear. She left the hospital in a fog, riding the bus home through streets that seemed darker than usual. Every shadow looked threatening. Every car that passed felt like it was watching. She was 3 blocks from her apartment when she noticed the black SUV. It had been behind the bus. Now it rolled slowly along the curb, matching her walking pace. Violet's survival instinct screamed. She turned down a side street, walking faster. The SUV turned too. Her apartment building appeared ahead. She broke into a run. The SUV pulled ahead and stopped, blocking her path. 2 men in expensive suits stepped out. Not cops, not robbers, something worse. The taller one raised his hands in a gesture that was supposed to be calming. Miss Monroe, we're not here to hurt you. Mr. Kozlov would like to speak with you. Violet's back hit the brick wall behind her. How do you know my name? We know everything. He gestured to the vehicle. Please, it's not a request. Violet's bag hit the sidewalk, contents spilling across concrete. Her keys, wallet, the memorial card with Emma's face, all scattered at her feet while 2 men in suits blocked her only escape route. The taller one bent down and collected her things with careful hands, placing each item back in her bag like he was handling something precious, instead of the belongings of a woman who owned nothing worth stealing. Mr. Kozlov wants to thank you, he said, offering her back, for keeping your promise to his son. The words didn't make sense. Thank her? Men like Kozlov didn't thank people. They buried them. I don't want thanks. I just want to go home. The second man, shorter and broader, opened the SUV's back door. The interior was all black leather and tinted windows. Ma'am, you can come willingly, or we can make this difficult. But either way, you're coming. Those are our orders. Violet looked at the open door like it was a mouth ready to swallow her whole. Every instinct screamed to run, but where would she go? They knew her name, her address, probably everything else about her pathetic life. She took her bag with shaking hands and climbed into the vehicle. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded like a coffin ceiling. The men got in front, separated from her by a privacy screen that slid up with a quiet hum. She was alone in the back, surrounded by luxury she'd only seen in movies, being driven towards something she couldn't name, but knew would change everything. The city passed out tinted windows. Her neighborhood disappeared, replaced by streets that got cleaner, buildings that got taller, people who looked like they'd never worried about rent in their lives. The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a high-rise that stretched into the sky like a monument to wealth. Security checkpoints, cameras everywhere, armed guards who nodded at the vehicle like they'd been expecting it. The elevator required a key card and fingerprint scanner. The button the tall man pressed had no number, just a symbol that looked like a wolf's head. They rose in silence. Violet watched the numbers climb. 20, 30, 40. Her ears popped from the pressure. The doors opened directly into an apartment that couldn't be called an apartment. It was a kingdom suspended in the air. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. Original artwork that belonged in museums. Furniture that cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. Everything cold and perfect and absolutely terrifying. But it was the men positioned throughout the space that made her blood freeze. 6 of them at least, all armed, all watching her with expressions that said her life meant nothing. The tall man gestured down a hallway. Mr. Kozlov is in his office. Violet's legs moved on autopilot. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with closed doors hiding God knew what. At the end, an open doorway spilled light and the low murmur of voices. She stopped at the threshold. The office looked like a war room. Tactical maps covered one wall. Security monitors showed dozens of camera feeds from locations across the city. Phones, computers, encrypted radios, all the technology of someone who controlled things from the shadows. And behind a massive desk sat a man who radiated danger like heat. Viktor Kozlov was bigger than she'd expected, tall enough that standing would make him tower over her, broad shoulders in a tailored suit that probably cost what she paid in annual rent. Dark hair, sharp features, and ice blue eyes identical to his son's, but colder, harder. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, making him look like he'd survived something that should have killed him. He was looking at a laptop when she entered, but his attention shifted to her with the precision of a predator identifying prey. Miss Monroe. His voice was deep, accented with something Eastern European. Please, sit. It wasn't a request. Violet forced herself to move to the chair across from his desk. She sat on the edge, ready to run, despite knowing she'd never make it to the elevator. Victor studied her with unsettling intensity. You kept your promise to my son. No one keeps promises to him. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. He leaned back in his chair. Hair, and she noticed how he moved, controlled and efficient, like violence was always 1 second away. Leo hasn't stopped talking about you, the woman who stayed, the woman who came back. He's asked for you every night since we left the hospital. I didn't know who he was, who you were. A slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Would it have mattered? Yes. Violet met his gaze despite her fear. I would have stayed away. Honest. Victor seemed to appreciate that. But you didn't stay away. You came back. Why? Because I promised. He stood then, and she understood why people feared him. He was massive, built like someone who'd done violence with his hands, and would do it again without hesitation. He walked to the window, looking out over the city he controlled. My son is dying, he said flatly. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, aggressive. The best doctors, the best treatments, the best everything money can buy, and he's still dying. Violet's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Everyone in his life is there because I pay them or threaten them. Doctors who see a paycheck, nurses who see their shift ending, guards who see an assignment. He turned to face her. And then you, a woman with nothing, who risked her job to sit on a floor with a dying boy because he was crying. I lost my sister to leukemia. I know what it feels like to be alone in a hospital. Victor's expression shifted, something almost human flickering across his features, before the ice returned. He moved back to his desk and pulled up something on his laptop, turning the screen toward her. Security footage, black and white, her entering Leo's room, sitting with him, holding his hand, leaving 3 hours later after he fell asleep. You were recorded, multiple cameras. This footage has been seen by people who would use it against me. Violet's stomach dropped. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to. I know. Victor closed the laptop. But intention doesn't matter in my world. You've been marked as someone close to my son. That makes you a target. Her hands gripped the chair arms. A target for what? He pulled out a remote and turned on a massive screen on the wall. News footage played. Gang violence, cartel activity, territory disputes, bodies found in the river. I'm at war, Victor said simply. The Serpiente cartel wants my territory, my business, my life. They've tried to kill me 6 times. When they realized they couldn't, they killed my wife instead. The screen showed a photo, a beautiful woman with dark hair and a genuine smile, standing next to a younger Victor who looked almost happy. Car bomb, 2 years ago, meant for me. She was collateral damage. The screen went dark. Now they know about you. They've already put surveillance on your apartment. That fire escape you use? Compromised. The diner where you work? They have people there. You went from invisible to marked the moment you touched my son. Violet couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. So what now? You kill me to clean up the problem? Victor returned to his chair and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk to her. No, I offer you a choice. She opened the folder with numb fingers. Legal documents, contracts, banking information. You move into the guest suite here. You spend time with Leo, not as a nurse, not as an employee, but as someone who exists in his life because you want to. In exchange, I pay you $5,000 per week, clear your medical debt, and protection from the people who now want you dead. Violet stared at the papers. This was insane, all of it. And if I say no, then you leave here tonight, and within 48 hours, the cartel will grab you off the street. They'll torture you for information about my security, my routines, my weaknesses. Then they'll send me pieces of you as a message. He said it without emotion, like he was describing the weather. You're saying I have no choice? You have a choice. Victor leaned forward. Die quickly if I have my men end this cleanly right now. Die slowly in cartel hands. Or live here, well paid and protected, making my dying son's last months bearable. The weight of it crushed down on her. How did sitting with a crying child lead to this? Why? She whispered. Why go through all this for me? Victor's mask slipped for just a second. Because Leo smiled when he talked about you. My son is dying, and for 3 minutes, while describing the woman who told him a story, he smiled. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious? His hands were flat on the desk, knuckles white with pressure. I can give him medicine, I can give him comfort, I can kill anyone who threatens him, but I can't give him hope. You did that in one night. So yes, I'll move heaven and earth to keep you in his life, even if it means protecting someone from a world they never asked to enter. The office fell silent, except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of the city below. Violet looked at the contract, at the money that would solve every problem she had, at the cage it represented. What happens when Leo dies? Victor finished. You leave with enough money to disappear anywhere in the world. New identity if you want it. You'll never hear from me again. And if I can't do this, if I break, then you tell me and we end the arrangement. But until then, you're under my protection. No one touches you, no one threatens you. You become untouchable because you belong to this family. Violet's hand shook as she picked up the pen sitting on top of the contract. She thought of Emma, of promises she couldn't keep, of a little boy who reminded her why she used to believe in something. She signed her name. Victor took the contract and locked it in his desk. Welcome to the Kozlov family, Miss Monroe. Ivan will show you to your rooms. The tall man from earlier appeared in the doorway like he'd been summoned telepathically. As Violet stood to leave, Victor spoke one more time. One rule. You leave this building without proper security, you die. Not as a threat from me, as a fact of your new reality. Understood? Understood. She followed Ivan down the hallway, each step feeling like descending into a world she couldn't escape. They passed a door left slightly open. Inside, she caught a glimpse of Leo asleep in a bed surrounded by medical equipment, the stuffed wolf tucked under his arm. She'd saved herself by agreeing to save him. Now she just had to figure out if the price was worth it. Before we go further, I want you to subscribe to the channel. Comment below where you're watching this from. I want to hear from every single one of you following this story. The guest suite was larger than Violet's entire apartment. Ivan opened the door and stepped Ivan aside, gesturing for her to enter a space that felt like stepping into someone else's life. Hardwood floors, a king-sized bed with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, private bathroom with a tub big enough to drown in, a sitting area with a couch and flat-screen television mounted on the wall, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city she'd spent her whole life in but had never seen from this height. Everything you need is already here, Ivan said, his accent thick and his tone suggesting he didn't approve of her presence. Clothes in the closet, sized appropriately. Toiletries in the bathroom. Kitchen is stocked. Do not leave this floor without security escort. He pointed to a small black button mounted near the door. Panic button. Press it, and 4 armed guards arrive in under 10 seconds. Press it as a test, and you'll regret wasting our time. His eyes were cold, assessing her like a problem to be solved or eliminated. How long have you worked for him? Violet asked, trying to find some humanity in this man. 17 years. Since before the boy was born. Since before the wife died. I've seen people like you come and go. People like me. Civilians who think they can survive this world. Ivan moved to the door. You won't last a week. They never do. But the boss wants you here, so here you stay until you break or die. He left before she could respond, the door clicking shut with a finality that made her feel trapped despite the luxury surrounding her. Violet stood in the center of the room, turning slowly to take it all in. This wasn't real. None of this could be real. She walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the glass. Below, the city sprawled like a living thing. Somewhere down there was her studio apartment with the eviction notice on the door, the diner with the broken sign, the life she'd been living yesterday. That life was gone now. She'd signed it away with one signature on a contract that felt more like a deal with the devil. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass, auburn hair messy from the SUV ride, green eyes wide with shock. She looked small against the backdrop of the city, insignificant and out of place. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she said, expecting Ivan or one of the other guards. The door opened slowly, and Leo peeked around the edge. He wore pajamas covered in small wools, his dark hair sticking up in different directions, his pale face breaking into the biggest smile she'd seen on any child. "You came back," he whispered, like it was the best secret in the world. Violet's heart cracked open. "I promised, didn't I?" Leo ran to her on bare feet, wrapping thin arms around her waist and holding on like she might disappear. She dropped to her knees and hugged him back, feeling how fragile he was, all sharp bones and shallow breathing. "Papa said you're going to stay here, with us. Is that true?" "Yeah, looks like it." "Forever?" Violet pulled back to look at him. "For as long as you need me. That's basically forever." Leo grinned, and in that moment, he looked like a normal 6-year-old instead of a dying boy carrying too much weight. The door opened wider, and Victor appeared. He'd removed his suit jacket, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. He looked different, less like a crime boss and more like an exhausted father. "Leo, you're supposed to be in bed." "But Violet's here. I wanted to make sure she was real." Victor's ice-blue eyes met Violet's over his son's head. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe? Or acknowledgement that they were both trapped in this situation by their love for this boy. "She's real. Now bed. You have treatment tomorrow." Leo's face fell. "Do I have to?" "Yes." Victor's voice was firm but not harsh. "Come on, I'll tuck you in." "Can Violet come too?" The question hung in the air. Victor's jaw tightened, and Violet saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was deciding how much access to give her, how close to let her get. "If she wants to." "I want to," Violet said before she could think better of it. They walked together down the hallway, a strange procession. Victor in front, Leo in the middle holding both their hands, and Violet trying not to think about how surreal this was. Leo's room was massive, but felt lived in. Toys scattered across the floor, books on shelves, drawings taped to the walls, showing the same violent scribbling she'd seen in the hospital. And everywhere, wolves. Stuffed wolves, wolf posters, wolf figurines, a child's obsession with an animal that represented his father's nickname. The medical equipment was harder to ignore. IV pole, monitors, emergency medications lined up on a dresser. Leo climbed in without being told, pulling the covers up to his chin. The stuffed wolf with the torn ear went under one arm. Victor checked the monitors with practiced efficiency, adjusting something Violet didn't understand. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, and his whole demeanor shifted. The crime boss disappeared. Just a father remained. "Story?" Leo asked, hopefully. "Short one. It's late." Victor told a tale about a wolf pack protecting their territory from invaders. His voice was different when he spoke to his son, softer, almost gentle, but the story was still about violence and survival, because that was the only world he knew. Leo's eyes started to close before the story finished. Victor stopped mid-sentence, watching his son drift off with an expression that Violet recognized, the same way she used to watch Emma sleep, knowing each night might be the last. He stood carefully, making sure not to disturb the bed, gestured for Violet to follow him out. In the hallway, with the door pulled almost closed, Victor's mask returned. Tomorrow, he has chemotherapy, 8 in the morning, private facility, 10 minutes from here. You'll accompany us. It wasn't a question. Okay. The doctors will ask who you are. Tell them you're family. They won't question it. And if they do, they won't. Victor started walking toward his office. Everyone who works there understands that asking questions is bad for their health. Violet followed, not sure if she was dismissed or expected to stay. He hasn't said what happens day to day, what I'm supposed to do. Victor entered his office and poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. He offered her one. She took it because refusing felt dangerous. You exist in his life. That's the job. Ate breakfast with him. Watch movies. Play games. Be a normal person in an abnormal situation. He took a drink. And you follow security protocols without argument, which are: Ivan or another guard accompanies you anywhere outside this penthouse. You don't answer the door. You don't use your old phone or contact anyone from your previous life. You speak to no one about what happens here, what you see, who you meet. So, I'm a prisoner? Victor's expression hardened. You're protected. There's a difference. Prisoners don't get paid $5,000 a week. Blood money. Money that clears the $23,000 in medical debt you're carrying. Money that means you never have to serve coffee to truck drivers who grab your wrist again. Violet froze. How do you know about that? I know everything about you, Violet Monroe. 26 years old. Sister Emma died 2 years ago from ALL, same as Leo. You dropped out of nursing school to work double shifts, paying for a funeral and treatment that didn't work. You take anxiety medication you can't afford. You were 14 days from eviction when my men picked you up. He set his glass down, and the sound was sharp in the quiet office. I know you haven't been to a dentist in 4 years. I know you donate plasma twice a month for extra cash, even though it makes you dizzy. I know you eat 1 meal a day so you can save money. I know everything, because that's how I keep my son safe, by knowing who gets close to him. The words should have felt invasive, but mostly they felt sad. Her life reduced to facts in a file. Evidence of survival, not living. So, what happens now? She asked quietly. I just exist here until Leo doesn't need me anymore? Something flickered in Victor's expression. Until he doesn't need you, or until the war is over and it's safe for you to leave. Whichever comes first. And if I want to leave before then you tell me and I'll arrange it. But you need to understand what you'd be walking back into. Your apartment is already under cartel surveillance. They torched the building 2 days ago, killing 3 people, looking for you. Violet's glass slipped from her numb fingers. It hit the floor but didn't break, just spilled amber liquid across expensive carpet. What? Victor pulled up news footage on one of his monitors. Her building engulfed in flames. Emergency vehicles, body bags, graffiti on the adjacent wall that she couldn't read but understood was a message. You did this by sitting with my son, not because you're guilty of anything except kindness. But in my world, kindness is a weapon people use against you. He turned off the monitor. So no, you're not a prisoner. You're someone I'm keeping alive because my son cares about you, and because you kept a promise when no one else would. Violet stared at the spilled drink soaking into the carpet. 3 people dead. Because she'd held a crying boy's hand? I didn't ask for any of this. Neither did Leo. Victor's voice was cold again. Neither did my wife. But we don't get to choose the wars we're born into. We just survive them. He walked her to the door. Tomorrow, 7 in the morning. Be ready. Ivan will escort you to breakfast with Leo. After that, we go to treatment. Welcome to your new life, Miss Monroe. Try to stay alive long enough to earn that first paycheck." The door closed in her face. Violet walked back to her suite in a daze, her mind replaying the burning building, the body bags, the casual way Victor had told her she was responsible for deaths she didn't cause. She locked herself in the bathroom and threw up everything in her stomach until only bile remained. Then she sat on the cold tile floor and cried for the 3 neighbors she'd never know, for the life she'd lost, for the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Somewhere in the penthouse, a little boy slept peacefully because she'd agreed to stay. And somewhere in the city, people who wanted her dead were planning their next move. She'd signed a contract. Now she just had to survive it. The first week passed in a blur of routines Violet didn't know she'd be building. 7 in the morning, Ivan knocked on her door with the subtlety of a battering ram. Breakfast was served in the penthouse's main dining room, a space large enough to seat 20, but occupied by just her and Leo at one end of a table that felt miles long. Leo talked non-stop during meals, filling silence with questions about everything. What was her favorite color? Did she like wolves? Had she ever been on a plane? Could she play chess? The questions were a lifeline for both of them, something normal in a world that was anything but. Victor was usually gone before they woke. Business, Ivan said without elaborating. The kind of business that kept a crime empire running and enemies at bay. Tuesdays and Thursdays meant treatment sessions at a private medical facility that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Violet sat beside Leo during chemotherapy infusions, holding his hand while poison dripped into his veins to kill the disease trying to kill him. The medical staff treated her with careful politeness, asking no questions about who she was or why she was there. They called her Miss Monroe and avoided eye contact, like acknowledging her directly might be dangerous. Leo handled the treatments with a bravery that broke her heart. He didn't cry, didn't complain, just sat quietly while his small body was pumped full of chemicals, squeezing Violet's hand when the nausea got bad. "You're so brave," she told him during the second session. "Papa says bravery is just being scared, but doing it anyway. Your papa's right about that." Leo looked at her with those ice blue eyes that saw too much. "Are you scared?" "All the time." "But you stay anyway." "Yeah, I stay anyway." "That's brave, too." The words settled into her chest and stayed there. Between treatments, they fell into patterns. Mornings were for homeschooling. Leo couldn't attend regular school, too much risk from illness and from enemies, so Violet taught him what she could. Reading, basic math, science from books that made learning feel like adventures. He was smart, sharper than any 6-year-old should be. He read above his grade level and asked questions that required answers she had to look up. "Why do people hurt each other?" he asked one morning while they read about history. Violet set the book down. "That's a big question." "Papa hurts people. I hear things. I'm not supposed to, but I do." She chose her words carefully. "Sometimes people hurt others to protect the people they love. Is that okay?" "I don't know, Leo. I really don't know." He seemed satisfied with her honesty. "At least you don't lie to me like everyone else does." Afternoons were for being children, or trying to be. They watched movies on the massive television. They built elaborate structures from blocks. They drew pictures, though Leo's still featured the same violent scribbling over faces. Violet tried once to ask about it. "Who are these people you're erasing?" Leo's hand stopped mid-scribble. People who left. People who weren't real. He wouldn't say more. Evenings were when Victor returned, usually around 7 or 8. He'd appear in the doorway of whatever room they occupied, suit jacket gone, tie loosened, exhaustion carved into his features. But he always stopped to spend time with Leo, an hour minimum, no matter what crisis demanded his attention. They'd play chess, Victor teaching his son strategy and thinking 3 moves ahead, or they'd simply talk about Leo's day. Violet usually made herself scarce during these times. This was their ritual, father and son, and she was an outsider. But sometimes Victor would glance at her before she left the room. "Stay," he'd say. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite an order either. So she'd stay, sitting in the corner while they played, watching the way Victor's entire demeanor changed around his son. The violence, sleeping just beneath his surface, gentled into something almost tender. One evening, 3 weeks into her new life, Leo fell asleep on the couch between moves. Victor lifted him with a care that contradicted everything about his reputation, carrying him to bed without waking him. When he returned, Violet was still there, unsure if she was dismissed. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. She'd learned to accept these offerings. They were the closest thing to conversation Victor allowed. "He's getting worse," Victor said quietly. "The scans show the tumor shrinking, but he's weaker, eating less, sleeping more. Treatment does that. It has to get worse before it gets better." "Does it get better?" The question was raw, unguarded, a crack in his armor. "Sometimes." Violet sipped the whiskey, letting it burn. "My sister didn't make it. But some kids do. Leo's young, strong. He has a chance." Victor stared into his glass. "I've killed 23 men with my own hands, ordered the deaths of countless others. I control territory, money, power, and none of it means anything if I can't save him." The confession hung between them. "You're doing everything you can. It's not enough. It's never enough." Violet saw him then, really saw him. Not the wolf of the city, just a terrified father watching his child slip away and unable to stop it. "He makes you smile," Victor said suddenly. "I've noticed. When you're with him, you smile like you mean it. He makes me remember why I wanted to be a nurse, why I wanted to help kids." "Why did you stop?" "Because watching my sister die broke something in me. I couldn't go back to hospitals after that. Couldn't watch other children fight battles they might lose. But you're doing it now." Violet met his gaze. "Yeah, I guess I am." Something shifted in Victor's expression, something that looked almost like gratitude. The moment broke when Ivan entered without knocking. "Sir, we have movement. South side, near the docks. Looks like Cartel positioning for something." Victor's transformation was instant. The vulnerable father disappeared, replaced by the commander. He set down his glass and was moving before Violet could blink. "Stay with Leo. Don't leave this floor." Then he was gone, and Violet was alone with the echo of his concern. These absences became more frequent as the weeks passed. Victor would disappear for days sometimes, returning with new scars and blood on his clothes that wasn't his own. Leo never asked where his father went. He knew, in the way children of violence always know. "Is Papa coming back tonight?" he'd ask Violet during dinner. "I don't know, baby." "He always comes back." Leo's certainty was heartbreaking. "He has to. I'm not done needing him yet." One night, a month into her captivity, or salvation, Violet couldn't tell which anymore. She found Victor in the kitchen at 2 a.m. He stood at the window overlooking the city, still in tactical gear, dried blood on his hands. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He didn't turn. "Sleep is a luxury. Enemies don't sleep." She moved into the kitchen and started making tea, something to do with her hands. "You need to rest sometime." "I'll rest when he's safe." "He'll never be safe if you're dead from exhaustion." Victor finally looked at her. "Bold words for someone who works for me." "I don't work for you. I'm here for Leo." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Yes, you are." She poured 2 cups of tea and slid one across the counter to him. He took it like the gesture surprised him. "Thank you. Not for the tea. For staying. For not running when Ivan said you wouldn't last a week." Violet smiled despite everything. "How much did you bet him?" "500 that you'd make it to month 2. It's been a month and 3 days." "I know." Victor's lips quirked. "I'm about to win $500. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking tea while the city slept below them. "Tell me about your wife," Violet said quietly, "if you want to." Victor's hands tightened on the cup. "Katya. She was a translator, Russian to English. I met her during a negotiation. She made me laugh. The admission sounded like a confession. She wanted me to leave this life. Promised her I would after 1 more year. Then another year. Then another. She stopped believing my promises, but she stayed anyway. Like me. Not like you." Victor's gaze was intense. She stayed because she loved me despite what I was. You stayed because you love him for who he is. Can't both be true? The question lingered unanswered. The car bomb was meant for me, Victor continued. I was supposed to be driving. She took my car because hers wouldn't start. They didn't know. They just saw the vehicle and triggered it. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Doesn't give Leo his mother. Doesn't erase the fact that loving me got her killed. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands shook. Is that why you push everyone away? Victor set down his cup. I don't push away. I protect. There's a difference. Feels the same from the outside. Then you're not looking close enough. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, understanding, something neither wanted to name. Leo's voice calling from his room broke the moment. Nightmare, probably. They both moved, reaching his door at the same time. Leo sat up in bed, tears on his face, reaching for comfort. Bad dream, he whispered. Violet sat on one side of the bed, Victor on the other. Together they soothed him back to sleep, an unplanned coordination that felt natural. When Leo's breathing evened out, Victor looked at Violet across his son's sleeping form. You're good for him, for us. The words were quiet, almost hesitant. I'm just keeping a promise. You're doing more than that. Victor stood carefully, and I'm grateful, even if I don't say it enough. He left before she could respond. Violet stayed with Leo until dawn, watching him sleep, thinking about fathers who killed to protect, and women who stayed despite knowing better. Somewhere in the past month, this had stopped being a job. It had become something else entirely, something that terrified her more than cartel threats or violence ever could. The attack came during Leo's treatment session. Violet sat beside him in the private medical facility's infusion room, holding his hand while chemicals dripped through his IV. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and Leo's soft humming of a song she taught him last week. 2 guards stood outside the door. Standard protocol. Nothing felt wrong. Then gunfire erupted in the hallway. The sound was unmistakable, violent, close. Screaming followed, then more shots, then the horrible silence that comes after chaos. Violet's body moved on instinct. She yanked Leo's IV out with shaking hands, ignoring his cry of pain, grabbed him from the chair and pulled him toward the bathroom attached to the infusion room. What's happening? Leo's voice was small, terrified. Stay quiet, baby. Stay with me. She locked the bathroom door and shoved him into the corner behind the toilet. Her hands found a mop handle, pathetic defense against men with guns, but it was what she had. The infusion room door exploded inward. Through the crack beneath the bathroom door, Violet saw boots, military style, moving with purpose, not the guards who'd brought them here. Voices in Spanish, commands she didn't understand, but recognized as coordination. Someone tried the bathroom door, found it locked. Violet pressed herself against the door, mop handle raised like a weapon, positioning her body between the door and Leo. The boy's breathing was too loud in the small space. Panicked, she reached back and put her hand over his mouth, gentle but firm. The door shuddered as someone kicked it. Once, twice. The lock wouldn't hold. On the 3rd kick, it gave way. A man filled the doorway. Late 20s, cartel tattoos visible on his neck, assault rifle in trained hands. His eyes found her first, then Leo behind her. He raised the weapon. Violet swung the mop handle with everything she had. It connected with his rifle, knocking his aim sideways as he fired. The bullet went wide, shattering the mirror above the sink. She swung again, catching him in the face. He stumbled back, surprised more than hurt, but it gave her seconds. She threw the mop handle at him and grabbed Leo, pulling him toward the door. Maybe they could run. Maybe the guards were still alive. Maybe anything was better than waiting to die in a bathroom. The man recovered faster than she expected. His hand caught her hair, yanking her backward. She fell hard, Leo torn from her grip. The soldier loomed over her, rifle aimed at her chest now. Blood ran from his nose where she'd hit him. He said something in Spanish. She didn't need translation. She understood the intent. Violet scrambled to her feet, putting herself between him and Leo again. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You'll have to go through me." The man smiled, said something that sounded like a message, something about Reyes and sending regards. His finger moved to the trigger. The infusion room door exploded again, this time inward with the force of something massive hitting it. Victor. He moved like violence incarnated. The first soldier dies before Violet registered he'd entered. The second tried to turn his weapon, but Victor was already on him, breaking his neck with efficient brutality. 3 more cartel soldiers rushed through the main door. Victor eliminated them in seconds. No hesitation, no mercy, pure lethal precision. The bathroom soldier tried to use Violet as a shield, grabbing her around the throat and pressing the rifle barrel to her temple. Victor froze. His ice-blue eyes met hers across 10 feet of space. She saw calculation happening behind his gaze. Angles, trajectories, acceptable losses. The soldier said something in Spanish, a demand. Victor's jaw clenched. Then Violet remembered the self-defense crash course Ivan had given her. More instinct than training, she dropped her full weight suddenly, slipping from the soldier's grip just enough. Victor's shot was instant. The bullet passed so close to Violet's head, she felt the air displacement. The soldier behind her dropped. The building fell silent except for alarms blaring and Leo's terrified sobbing. Victor crossed the space in 2 strides, hands on Violet's face, checking for injuries with shaking fingers. "Are you hit? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine. Leo, I need to get to Leo." She pushed past Victor and dropped beside the boy, curled in the corner. He was hyperventilating, eyes wide with shock. "Hey, baby, I'm here. You're safe now. Your papa's here." Leo threw himself at her, small arms wrapping around her neck with desperate strength. She held him tight, feeling wetness on her shoulder where he pressed his face. Victor knelt beside them. His tactical gear was splattered with blood. His hands, usually so controlled, trembled as he reached for his son. "Leo, look at me." The boy turned, still clutching Violet. "Papa? We need to move, now. More might be coming." Ivan appeared in the doorway. "The building's compromised, sir. Fire spreading from explosive devices they planted. Structural damage to the south stairwell. We need immediate evacuation." Victor lifted Leo from Violet's arms. The boy cried out, reaching back for her. "Bring her," Victor ordered. Ivan hesitated. "Sir, she'll slow us down." I said, "Bring her." Victor's voice was cold death. That's not a suggestion. They moved through the facility like soldiers in a war zone, bodies in the hallways, medical staff hiding in locked rooms, fire alarms screaming, smoke starting to fill the upper floors. Violet's megs barely worked. Shock and adrenaline fought for control of her body. Ivan grabbed her arm when she stumbled, half dragging her forward. The stairwell was chaos, emergency lighting, people fleeing, the smell of smoke getting stronger. On the 3rd floor landing, they encountered another cartel team. The firefight was brutal and close. Victor shielded Leo with his body while his guards engaged. Ivan pushed Violet behind a concrete pillar and told her to stay down. One of Victor's guards, a young man named Dmitri, who sometimes smiled at her during breakfast, took 3 rounds protecting them. He went tapped down hard and didn't get back up. Victor's order was ice cold. Keep moving. His death means nothing if they die. They reached the ground floor and burst into the parking garage. 2 SUVs waited, engines running. Ivan pushed Violet into the first vehicle with Victor and Leo. The garage exit exploded before they could reach it. The concussion rocked the SUV. Ivan cursed and threw the vehicle in reverse, tires screaming. "They'll have the building surrounded," Ivan said. "We need alternative extraction." Victor pulled out his phone, barking orders in Russian. Then to Ivan, "Roof. Helicopter in 10 minutes. We'll never hold that long." Then we hold 9 minutes. The drive back up the garage ramps felt like descending into hell in reverse. They abandoned the vehicles on the top level and ran for the roof access. Leo was fading. The stress and interrupted treatment were taking their toll. His breathing was shallow, skin too pale. He needed medication they'd left behind in the chaos. Victor noticed. His face went white. "We need his emergency kit." "It's gone," Ivan said. "Left it in the infusion room." "How long without it?" 6 hours, maybe less. Then he starts declining rapidly. Victor's control cracked. "We don't have 6 hours." The roof door burst open and they stumbled into open air. The city stretched around them, sirens wailing from multiple directions. Smoke poured from the building beneath them. And they weren't alone. Mikhail stood with 5 other men, all armed. Victor's lieutenant, the man who'd questioned Violet's presence from the beginning. He had a gun trained on Victor. "Sorry, boss." Mikhail's voice held no regret. "Reyes pays better. And you've gone soft." Victor's entire body went rigid. Soft? Look at you, risking everything for a dying kid and a civilian who makes you weak. The old Victor would have cut losses and survived. This Victor is a liability. Leo whimpered in Victor's arms. Violet moved closer instinctively, and Mikhail's gun shifted toward her. The whore dies first, then the boy. Then you get to feel what loss really means before I end you too. Victor's voice was death itself. Former friend, current corpse. Mikhail fired. The shot caught Victor in the shoulder, spinning him. He dropped to one knee but kept hold of Leo. Ivan moved to engage, but Cartel soldiers burst from the stairwell behind them, trapping them between 2 forces. Violet grabbed Leo from Victor's weakening grip and ran for cover behind the roof's HVAC equipment. The boy was crying, calling for his father, but she couldn't stop. Behind her, Victor and Mikhail fought, not with guns now, but with fists and fury. Years of trust betrayed. Victor was injured, slower. Mikhail was winning. Violet saw it happening, saw Mikhail raise his gun for the kill shot, saw Victor too far away to stop it. She made a choice. A fallen guard's weapon lay 3 feet away. She'd never fired a gun in her life, but she grabbed it anyway, stepped out from cover despite Leo screaming for her to stay hidden, and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her down. The shot went wide, hitting Mikhail in the leg instead of center mass, but it was enough. Victor used the distraction, moving with wounded speed, and delivered a killing blow. Mikhail went down hard, blood spreading beneath him. More soldiers, more gunfire. Ivan and the remaining guards fighting desperately. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Then Violet heard it. Helicopter rotors. But her relief died when she saw the aircraft approaching. Not rescue. Wrong colors. Cartel reinforcements. The helicopter hovered, and men rappelled down on ropes. 8 of them. Tactical gear, professional soldiers, not street thugs. And last came a man who radiated authority. Late 30s, gold teeth visible when he smiled, expensive suit under tactical vest. He landed with casual confidence and surveyed the rooftop like he owned it. Viktor Kozlov. His voice carried over the chaos. The wolf, brought down by his own heart. The man walked forward, surrounded by his soldiers. Everyone stopped fighting, weapons still raised, but nobody shooting. A standoff. Mateo Reyes. Victor's voice was resigned. "You want me. Let them go." Mateo laughed. Such nobility. Such weakness. He pulled a pistol and aimed at Leo. "Your son first, so you feel it the way I felt watching my brother die." "No." Victor's voice broke. "Please." Violet pulled Leo tighter against her, shielding every inch of him with her body. Mikhail shifted his aim to her. "And the woman who made you soft, she dies watching, then the boy, then you. In that order." His finger moved toward the trigger. Violet closed her eyes and pressed her face to Leo's hair, whispered, "I love you," into his ear, waited for the end. The explosion came from behind them, Ivan's emergency device, planted during the standoff. Smoke and chaos erupted. Victor moved, injured and desperate, but still lethal. He went straight for Mateo while his remaining guards engaged the cartel soldiers. Violet couldn't see through the smoke, could only hold Leo and pray. Then a bullet found her, not in the head, through her side. The pain was white-hot and distant at the same time. She felt herself falling, but refused to let go of Leo, covered him completely as they hit the roof together, heard him screaming her name, felt blood, warm and wrong, spreading across her shirt. Above her, through fading vision, she saw Victor and Mateo locked in combat. Brutal, final. One of them wouldn't survive. "Stay down, baby," she whispered to Leo. Her voice sounded far away. "Stay down." The world went gray at the edges. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Victor's face above hers, saying something she couldn't hear. Then, nothing. Violet woke to the sound of machines beeping and voices arguing in Russian. Pain radiated from her side like fire spreading through her entire body. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Don't. Victor's voice came from somewhere to her left. You'll tear the stitches. Her eyes focused slowly. Private room, medical equipment everywhere. Not a hospital, somewhere else. Secure. Leo sat in a chair beside her bed. He looked destroyed. Bruises covered his face. His shoulder was bandaged where Mikhail had shot him. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. Leo? Her voice came out as a croak. Alive. Stabilized. He's asking for you every hour. Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You took a bullet meant for him. What else would I do? The words came automatically. The same answer she'd given before. The truth that defined everything about why she'd stayed. Victor's control broke. His hands covered his face, and his shoulders shook with something that might have been a sob or might have been rage. You almost died. You almost died protecting my son, and I couldn't stop it. But you did stop it. We're alive. He looked up, and his eyes were red. 3 people died in that building. Dmitri died covering our escape. You almost bled out on that roof. And for what? Because I couldn't end this war fast enough? You killed Mateo. It wasn't a question, but Victor nodded anyway. I killed him. Slowly. Made sure he felt every second of it. Then I killed everyone who stood with him, his lieutenants, his soldiers, everyone who knew about the attack. Victor's voice was flat. And then I released everything. Everything? 6 months of evidence. Financial records, cartel operations, names, dates, locations. Sent it all to the FBI. By morning, every major cartel leader in the territory was in federal custody or dead. Violet processed this slowly. You ended the war. I ended the immediate threat. There will always be others, but for now, we can breathe. Victor stood and moved to the window. The city looks different when you're not constantly waiting for it to kill you. How long was I out? 3 days. Surgery to remove the bullet, repair the damage. You lost a lot of blood. He turned to face her. The surgeon said if we'd arrived 10 minutes later, you wouldn't have made it. But we didn't. I'm here. You're here. Victor moved back to her bedside. And Leo is alive because you stood between him and a bullet again. The weight of his gratitude was almost physical. Where is he? I want to see him. He's in the next room. Medical supervision. The stress triggered complications, but he's stable now. Victor pressed a button on the wall. I'll have them bring him in if you're strong enough. I'm strong enough. 5 minutes later, a nurse wheeled Leo in. He was in a wheelchair, medical equipment attached, but his face lit up like the sun when he saw her awake. Violet. He tried to get up, but the nurse stopped him. Careful, sweetheart. Violet extended her hand, and he grabbed it with both of his. Hey, baby, I'm okay. You got hurt. Because of me. Tears streamed down his face. The bad men shot you. I'm okay. See? Still here. You can't leave. Leo's voice was desperate. You promised you'd stay. I'm not going anywhere. Victor watched them, something breaking and reforming in his expression. I've restructured everything, he said quietly. Legitimate businesses, distance from street operations. It'll take years, but I'm building an exit strategy. Violet met his eyes over Leo's head. For him? For all of us. Victor's meaning was clear. If you'll stay. The question hung in the air, weighted with everything they'd survived together. The next week passed in recovery. Violet's room became a strange hub of activity. Leo spent hours with her, doing homework on her bed, watching movies on the wall-mounted television, just existing in the same space. Victor came and went, handling the aftermath of the war he'd ended. But he always returned eventually, checking on her healing, sitting in the chair beside her bed like he was standing guard. One evening, after Leo had fallen asleep on the couch in her room, Victor spoke quietly. Ivan lost his bet. You lasted longer than a week. Violet smiled despite the pain. How much did he lose? $500. And his pride. Victor's expression softened. You proved everyone wrong, including me. How? I thought keeping you here would be temporary. Arrangement that served its purpose until it didn't. But you've become something else entirely. What's that? Family. The word seemed to cost him something. You're not an employee anymore, Violet. You haven't been for a long time. Then what am I? Someone my son loves. Someone who took a bullet for him. Someone who makes this penthouse feel less like a fortress and more like a home. Victor paused. Someone I don't want to lose. The admission hung between them. I'm not asking you to stay for money anymore, Victor continued. I'm asking you to stay because we need you, both of us, however that looks, whatever that means. That's not a job contract. No, it's not. Violet studied his face. The scars, the exhaustion, the vulnerability he rarely showed. You're asking me to be part of your family? I'm asking you to be part of our lives. His, mine, as much or as little as you want. No contracts, no obligations beyond what you choose. And if I choose to leave, then I'll help you disappear. New identity, new life, enough money to start over anywhere. You'll be safe. Victor's voice was steady. But I hope you don't. Why? Because Leo needs you, and I've gotten used to having someone who looks at me like I'm more than the wolf. Violet felt tears building. I don't know how to do this, be part of this world. Neither did I until Katja. Victor sat on the edge of her bed carefully. She taught me that love doesn't follow rules or logic. It just exists, and you either accept it or spend your life running from it. Is that what this is? Love? For Leo, definitely. For me, Victor's hand found hers. I think it might be, if you'll let it. Before Violet could burst through the door, Sir, situation. FBI raid just hit the remaining Cartel safe houses. Our insurance policy paid off. They're cleaning up everything we couldn't. Victor stood, his moment of vulnerability disappearing behind the mask of command. Show me. They moved to the laptop Ivan had brought. News footage played. Federal agents executing coordinated raids across the city. Arrests, evidence seized, the systematic dismantling of the cartel infrastructure Victor had been fighting for years. Your anonymous tip led them straight to everything, Ivan said. The cartel's done. Finished. Victor watched the screen with satisfaction. Then he looked back at Violet. It's over. Really over. The weight of those words settled over the room. Leo stirred on the couch, waking slowly. He looked around, confused, then relaxed when he saw both Violet and Victor were still there. Did we win? He asked sleepily. Yeah, buddy. Victor moved to his son, lifting him carefully. We won. Does that mean Violet stays forever now? Victor glanced at Violet. That's up to her. 3 pairs of eyes focused on Violet. A 6-year-old boy who'd stolen her heart. A dangerous man who'd become something more than his reputation. And herself, reflected in the window behind them. No longer the woman who'd cleaned hospital floors for cash. I'm not going anywhere, she said finally. You're stuck with me. Leo's smile was worth every bullet, every nightmare, every moment of fear that had led to this. Victor's expression shifted into something she'd never seen before. Pure relief, pure hope. The news continued playing in the background. The war was over. The threats were neutralized. For the first time since Violet had entered their lives, they could breathe without waiting for the next attack. Ivan cleared his throat. Sir, there's one more thing. Mikhail's betrayal went deeper than we thought. He'd been feeding information to the cartel for 8 months, but his files also contained something else. What? A list of every person in the organization who questioned your recent changes. People who thought you'd gone soft. Victor's jaw tightened. What do you want me to do with it? Victor looked at Leo, then at Violet. Nothing. Anyone who thinks protecting family is weakness can leave. I'm done proving myself to people who don't understand what really matters. Ivan nodded slowly. Understood, sir. After Ivan left, the room fell quiet. Leo had fallen back asleep in Victor's arms. The medical equipment beeped steadily. Outside, the city continued its endless movement. Thank you, Victor said quietly, for staying, for saving him, for saving me. Violet smiled. You would have done the same. I have done the same. Every day since you walked into our lives. He carried Leo back to his room, and Violet watched them go. Father and son. Her family now, somehow. built not from blood, but from bullets and choices and desperate moments on rooftops. Her side ached where the bullet had torn through. The scar would be permanent, a reminder of the night she'd chosen a child's life over her own. She touched the bandage gently and didn't regret a thing. The door opened again. Victor returned, moving to sit beside her bed. Leo's asking about school, real school, with other kids. Is that safe? With the cartel gone and our restructuring? Maybe. For the first time? Maybe. Victor's hand found hers again. I want to give him normal, whatever version of that we can manage. What does normal look like for people like us? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. With you. Violet squeezed his hand. One day at a time. One day at a time. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the city lights through the window. Two broken people who'd found each other through the worst circumstances imaginable. A dying boy who'd brought them together. A war that had ended. A future that was finally possible. Violet closed her eyes and let herself hope for the first time in years. Maybe normal was possible after all. 6 months changed everything. The house was different from the penthouse, suburban, normal looking from the outside, with its 2-story colonial structure and manicured lawn. But the security was there if you knew where to look. Cameras disguised as outdoor lights, reinforced doors, panic rooms hidden behind false walls. Armed guards in a house 3 doors down, posing as a family. Protection without the feeling of a prison. That's what Victor had promised, and somehow he'd delivered. Violet stood at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables, a routine so domestic it still felt surreal. Through the window, she could see Leo in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball with energy that had been impossible 6 months ago. His hair had grown back, thick and dark like his father's. His skin had color again. The medical scans from last week showed what they'd been praying for. Remission. Not cured, never cured, but the cancer was undetectable. He'd need monitoring for years, possibly forever, but he was alive and thriving in ways the doctors had stopped predicting. The front door opened. Victor's voice carried through the house. I'm home. 3 words that had become Violet's favorite sound. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed in a suit, but looking less like a crime boss and more like a businessman. The legitimate ventures were growing. Import-export, real estate, security consultation. Legal money slowly replacing blood money. How was the meeting? Violet asked as he loosened his tie. Productive. The distribution deal went through. Victor moved behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. How was your day? Leo finished his math homework without complaining. That's basically a miracle. He gets that from you, the patience. He gets the stubbornness from you. Victor's laugh rumbled through his chest into her back. Fair assessment. Through the window, Leo spotted his father and came running inside, soccer ball under one arm. Papa, you're home. Did you see? I practiced like you showed me. I saw. Your form is getting better. Victor released Violet and knelt to Leo's level. Show me your footwork after dinner. Leo's grin was pure sunshine. Then he looked at Violet. Can we have the pasta you made last week, the one with the cheese? If that's what you want, that's what we'll have. Leo hugged her waist quickly, casually, the way children do when affection is constant and expected. Then he ran back outside to practice more. Violet watched him through the window, still amazed at the transformation. 6 months ago, he could barely walk without exhaustion. Now he was talking about joining a youth soccer league. It's real, isn't it? She said quietly. He's really going to be okay. Victor moved beside her, watching his son with an expression that still held traces of disbelief. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. That's more than they've ever been. He's strong, like his father. He's hopeful, like you. Victor turned to face her. I never thanked you properly. For staying when everything went to hell. For taking that bullet. For being here now when you could be anywhere. Where else would I be? Living your own life. Free from all of this. Violet met his ice blue eyes. This is my life now. By choice. The distance between them closed slowly. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across the scar on her cheekbone from the rooftop fight. I love you. The words were quiet but certain. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first night in the hospital when you kept your promise. Maybe later. But it's true. Violet's breath caught. She'd known, had felt it building for months. But hearing him say it made it real in a way nothing else could. I love you too. Both of you. This strange, complicated family we've built. Victor kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. When he pulled back, his expression held something she'd never seen before. Peace. Marry me? The words hung in the air between them. What? Marry me. Not because Leo needs stability, though he does. Not because it makes sense legally, though it does. But because I want to wake up next to you for whatever time we have. Because you make me believe in futures I stopped imagining years ago. Violet's hands were shaking. That's not a small. I'm aware. Victor's thumb traced circles on her wrist. And if you need time, take it. But I needed you to know. You're not just the woman who saved my son. You're the woman who saved me. Before Violet could answer, Leo burst back through the door. I'm starving. Is dinner ready yet? The moment paused, suspended. Victor's eyes held hers, waiting. Almost ready, Violet said. Go wash your hands. Leo ran toward the bathroom, and the spell broke. That's not a no, Victor said. It's not a yes either. Violet turned back to the vegetables, hands still trembling. It's a let me process that you just proposed while I was making dinner. Victor's laugh was genuine. Fair enough. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. They moved around each other in the kitchen with practiced coordination. Victor set the table while Violet finished cooking. Leo returned and chattered about his day, filling silence with the easy comfort of a child who felt safe. Dinner was loud and chaotic and perfect. Leo told jokes that weren't funny, but made them laugh anyway. Victor discussed the soccer practice schedule. Violet watched them both and felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for years. After Leo went to bed, Victor and Violet sat on the back porch with glasses of wine. The neighborhood was quiet, normal, everything they'd fought for. I've been thinking about your question, Violet said. That was fast. I've actually been thinking about it for a while, before you asked. She sipped her wine. When I lost Emma, I thought that was it. I'd had my chance at family, and it was gone. Then I met Leo and you, and suddenly I had something I'd stopped believing was possible. Victor waited, patient. So, yes. Violet turned to face him. My answer is yes. I'll marry you. The transformation in Victor's expression was complete. The wolf disappeared entirely, leaving just a man who'd been given something he didn't think he deserved. He set down his wine and pulled her close. The kiss was deeper this time, full of promise and relief and love that had been forged in fire. When they finally pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching stars appear in the clear sky. Leo asked about siblings yesterday, Victor said eventually. Caught me completely off guard. What did you tell him? That it was complicated. That we'd have to see. And what do you think? Victor's hand moved to rest on Violet's stomach, a question in the gesture. I think if it happened, I'd be terrified and grateful in equal measure. Violet covered his hand with hers. One day at a time, remember? One day at a time. The conversation shifted to easier topics. Victor's business deals, Leo's upcoming doctor's appointment, the security upgrades Ivan wanted to install, normal concerns for their abnormal life. Inside, Leo's voice called out, "Nightmare!" They both moved immediately, a coordinated response born of months of practice. Leo's room was dark, except for the nightlight shaped like a wolf. He sat up in bed, breathing fast. Bad dream about the roof. They still came sometimes. Flashbacks to violence a 6-year-old should never have witnessed. The therapist said they'd fade eventually. Until then, they dealt with them together. Victor sat on one side of the bed, Violet on the other. They'd done this dozens of times. Tell me 3 good things about today, Violet said, softly. Their ritual. I scored a goal. Leo's breathing started to slow. Papa came home early, and dinner was really good. See? More good than bad. Leo looked between them. Are you going to get married? I heard you talking. Victor and Violet exchanged glances. Yes, Victor said, if that's okay with you. Leo's face split into the biggest smile. Does that mean Violet is my mom now? The question hit Violet like a physical blow. She'd never thought of it in those terms, had never wanted to replace Katya's memory. I could never replace your first mom, she said carefully, but I love you like you're mine. If you want to call me Mom, I'd be honored. If you want to call me Violet, that's okay too. Leo considered this seriously. Can I call you both? Mom when I want to, Violet when I need to remember you chose us? Yeah, baby, you can call me both. He hugged her tight. I'm glad you stayed, even when it was scary. Me too. Victor tucked Leo back in, adjusting the blankets with gentle hands. Sleep now. We're right down the hall if you need us. They left his door cracked open, light from the hallway spilling across his floor. In their own bedroom, Violet stood at the window looking out at the quiet street. Victor came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist in a gesture that had become familiar. You okay? He asked. I'm thinking about how different everything is. 6 months ago, I was cleaning hospital floors for $9 an hour. Now I'm here, in a house I couldn't have afforded to look at, engaged to a man I should probably be afraid of, raising a child who calls me Mom? Regrets? Not even one. Violet turned in his arms. It's just surreal, like I'm living someone else's life. It's your life. Victor's hands framed her face. You earned every bit of it. You saved my son. You survived a war. You chose to stay when anyone reasonable would have run. Maybe I'm not reasonable. You're the most reasonable person I know. That's why I love you. They stood together in the quiet room, holding each other, feeling the peace they'd fought so hard to achieve. Tomorrow, they'd wake up and do it again. Build normal, one day at a time. Raise Leo, grow Victor's legitimate business, plan a wedding, live the life they'd carved out of violence and desperation. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. Violet pulled back to look at Victor. Thank you. For what? For giving me a reason to live instead of just survive. For Leo. For this. For us. I should be thanking you. You walked into our lives and changed everything. We saved each other then. Yes. Victor kissed her forehead. We did. Outside, the neighborhood slept. Inside, a former crime boss, a former waitress, and a 6-year-old boy who'd survived cancer all breathed easier. Family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was built in fire, forged in fear, and sealed by choices made in desperate moments. Sometimes it was a woman who kept promises, a man who learned that love was stronger than violence, and a child who reminded them both why fighting mattered. Violet closed her eyes and let herself believe in happy endings. They'd earned this one. Every bullet, every nightmare, every moment of terror had led to this peace. And it was worth it. All of it. She was home.